Welcome to the Simply Pediatrics Podcast, simplifying holistic healthcare for infants and children. We're so glad you're here. Join Jennifer Zethner, holistic pediatric nurse practitioner and holistic mom of 3 on a mission. Listen in as she shares the answers to the most asked questions from parents in her practice every day and offers parents practical strategies and actionable steps to support their child's health and well-being. Enjoy this insightful episode of the Simply Pediatrics Podcast and stay tuned for more information at the end of the podcast.
Hi, I'm Jennie Zethner. That's right, I'm here in my car. I don't know about the rest of you, but I find sitting in my car to be very peaceful. It happens to be one of the quietest places I have in my life. I have 3 children. I work full time. I'm busy like the rest of you, and I really would like to share information, and doing it from my car is most convenient. So I'm going to ask you to please forgive if there's any commotion behind me, any beeping, any dogs barking, ambulances, fire trucks, etc. I'll do the best I can to find quiet places. I assure you I will never be driving my vehicle when I speak to you. I will always be pulled over and parked. I am typically parked waiting for one of my children to come out of an event or something. So that is what I'm doing with my time here. And I look forward to sharing information with you. And again, forgive me for being a little unprofessional being here in my car, but I hope it works. And with that, let's get started.
Today's episode, fever.
Hi and welcome everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you today. I'm talking about fever. All right, it is one of the most common reasons I hear from families. My baby has a fever. All right, so I'm talking about babies over 4 months old. When we're under 4 months, this is a little bit of a different situation, under 3 months really, but when your baby's under 4 months and they're having their first fever, different situation. So this is addressed to babies that are 4 months and up and are having their first fever. So first, what is fever? Fever is really any temperature above 100.4 rectally. I do recommend rectal temperatures in children who are not yet walking. Once they can walk, we should not be doing rectal temps anymore, okay? That should be like under the arm or the ear, all right? Any temp to me that's just hanging around the 101s, like high hundreds or low 101s, is possibly teething, okay? So until proven otherwise, if it's around that 101, I'm thinking teething. Once it rises well into the 101s and above, then we're thinking we have somebody who might be sick. I recommend that families try to stay home for that first 24 hours. I know some families just absolutely panic as soon as they see a high number on the thermometer. I really encourage families to stay home for the first 24 hours unless there's like an obvious other issue going on, because the first 24 hours, you know, things usually change the next day, and we want to kind of address and see what else is going on. Most important to do when your child has a fever is to stay calm and to keep them hydrated. So keeping a child hydrated is really important. Parents also get very upset because they say, my child doesn't look good. Your child's not going to look good when they have a fever, and that is okay. Try to remember what it feels like to have a fever. What do you want to do? Nothing. You want to sleep. So you need to allow your child to sleep, let them rest, and keep them hydrated. They're not going to eat. That's also okay. All right. We do not need to feed a child with a fever. In fact, if you try to go ahead, and I have lots of families that'll do this, they'll say, well, they wouldn't eat, so I just gave them their favorite food. You know, I gave them strawberries or whatever it may be. And inevitably they vomit because, you know, our body temperature is heated up, right? So if you put food in there, you're likely going to vomit. So we do not need to eat. No matter what age your child is, they do not need to eat when they have a fever. They do need to stay hydrated. All right. So what does that look like? So for about over a 12-hour period, so say like 7A to 7P, we're looking for at least 3 wet diapers, or a child that's potty trained has urinated at least 3 times. So that's really what we're looking for, to know that your child is getting adequate enough fluids to stay hydrated. So what is hydration? Breastfeeding. So if you're still breastfeeding your baby, that really is ideal for them to get that breast milk when they have a fever. If you're no longer breastfeeding, or if you've never breastfed and your child is formula fed, it can get a little tricky with the formula. You can give them the formula through the fever, but they often kind of throw that up too because it sort of curdles in their belly. So you can also interject some organic electrolyte solutions. And I don't like to mention brands, but there's a lot of different organic electrolyte brands on the market. So look for those for your child and maybe alternate that out with your formula to keep your child hydrated. Other ways of staying hydrated are going to be soup broths. So you can do like unsalted soup broths. Make sure you taste them yourself. They should be tasty. You can add onion and garlic to that. So some soup broths, ideally some bone broths, because it's adding in some good, nutrients there for them. So sips, so small sips throughout the day of the electrolyte solution, the breast milk, the soup broth, and then also teas. There's so many healing teas that contain mullein, ginger, turmeric, chamomile, very relaxing. There's many teas that we can safely give to children that actually taste pretty good that they'll sip on. And you don't have to obviously serve that hot. It can be warm or chilled if they prefer it that way. So sips of all these, and try to alter it. And again, remember what it feels like when you have a fever. If someone's bringing you soup, it's good right now, but in another hour you're like, oh, I just can't get that down. And then you alter it out to something sweet. So I always say savory sweet, kind of going back and forth with the fluids to keep them hydrated. For our real stubborn school-age children, and I get this often, I even have seen it with my own children, they'll be real stubborn and they won't drink anything. They'll just refuse. And so for those kids, you have to be real creative. And in fact, sometimes you need to bring in some juice. If they really won't stay hydrated and you have to bring in some juice that you might not ordinarily like to give them, but just give it, alternate it in with the other electrolytes, because the staying hydrated is so important. If you get dehydrated, those are the children that ends up having to go to urgent care or ER, because dehydration and fever can really lead to some issues and complications. All right, so we're staying hydrated with a variety of different fluids for our kids. Ways that we can help them to be comfortable are varied. There's many different ways. First of all, keep them close. For our kiddos under a year or even, 2 and under, skin to skin is really helpful. Them being on top of us, it helps to regulate their body temperature so that they stay comfortable. So keeping them near you, close to you is really ideal if it's possible. All right. There's also something called a wet sock treatment that you can use on any age child. Some children won't tolerate it, but is a wet sock treatment is taking ideally taking your child out of a warm bath, by the way, just to back up for a second, bathing your child, no cold baths. I don't know where this came from, but if you have a fever and you get into a cold, that does not feel good. All right. In fact, it should be pretty warm, because if their body's hot already, you want them to be comfortable. So a warm bath. And when you take them out of the bath, wrapping their feet in cold, I know it sounds weird, cold, wet cotton socks on their feet, and then putting warm wool socks over their feet, or a warm wool blanket. And that really does help to just kind of make them more comfortable, lower the fever a little bit. Nothing's going to get rid of it, and that's okay. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. And it helps their bodies to sort of just manage that fever. All right. There's also an array of homeopathic remedies that you should speak about with your holistic provider that you have for your child to help them to be more comfortable. You can treat any age child really with homeopathy. Essential oils to keep on hand when your child has a fever is lavender. Lavender essential oil, either diffused or like one tiny drop, massaged down their back and on their ears, or sort of some acupressure points that also helps them to be more comfortable with their fever. Do not overbundle your baby when they have a fever. Really clothing that breathes. So that's like your bamboo, your cotton, no synthetics or flannels and fleeces, because they will overheat in that. So keep them in clothing that kind of breathes, is mindful. Don't take a baby with a fever outside either. Again, if you've ever had a fever, the energy of the outdoors is way too much on our systems. It really is just too much. So keep them in and keep them closed. If you want to get a little fresh air by cracking a window, fine. But don't take them outdoors when they have a fever. All right. The body makes a fever for a reason. We do not need to get rid of a fever. All the time, families texting me, the fever's this, the fever's that. What do I do to get rid of it? You do not need ever to get rid of a fever. A fever is the body's healthy, normal way of responding to an illness. It is heating up to do the work that it needs to. And I can have some articles at the end of this podcast to go into the nerdy science as to why and how that works. All right. But there is a fever there for a reason. you are just as sick at 102 as you are at 105, right? So I know they'll be more uncomfortable at 105, but you are sick. Once it's over that 101 mark, we consider them kind of in a state of illness. Febrile seizure. I get it. Super, super scary. And that is the number one reason why families want to get rid of a temperature, a fever, is they'll tell me, I'm afraid of a seizure. A febrile seizure is incredibly rare. It can be hereditary, but it is rare. And what happens is typically it occurs in a child who otherwise looks well. Like they're kind of just hanging out and playing, and it's typically a toddler, and all of a sudden they have a seizure. Incredibly frightening, and certainly warrants a visit to your medical provider. What we find out though is that they're really hot. And what happens in children who are predisposed to have a febrile seizure is that their body temperature, for whatever reason, jumps really quickly. So you cannot prevent and you cannot predict who's going to do this. Again, I know it's very frightening, but it's not like you can watch the thermometer. It's not like you can say, oh no, now it's 102. Oh no, now it's 103. It jumps so quickly, it's not something that you're going to see. Now, if your child has already had a febrile seizure, this is really not going to help you. I mean, I get it. It's very frightening. And, speak to your medical provider about that, about other things that you can do to make them comfortable. And, but to worry about it happening, it is rare, and we can't prevent it, and we can't predict who's going to do it. So don't think that the number on the thermometer is going to tell you that, because really it can happen at any number on the thermometer. It's just how quickly it jumps up. And again, it typically happens in a child who's like regular body temperature, like 98.6, and they jump to say 102, right? So their body just jumps really quickly. Okay. I do not recommend Tylenol and Motrin. Most of the providers out there who are holistic minded are going to tell you the same thing. Many conventional pediatricians now understand that we should certainly not be rotating Tylenol and Motrin. That was a big thing for a long time. That is dangerous. So absolutely no rotating Tylenol and Motrin. There is no Motrin for children under the age of 6 months. If you do have to give something under 6 months, it should be Tylenol or Acetaminophen. And I don't recommend them for the most part overall. However, do keep one of them in the home. I'm going to tell you why. All right. I don't recommend giving it because we want our body to do the work that it needs to. But in my many, 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 many years here of doing this work, what I have experienced is that families do their best that they can, right? To allow their child to have a fever. By the way, if you allow your child to have a fever, their illness is usually a little bit lesser than it would be if you kept giving them Tylenol and Motrin. So if I have moms and dads that are doing their work, keeping their child hydrated, but the fevers, are high, and fevers are usually higher at night, which is hard because you can't really reach anybody at that hour to talk to. So this is why I recommend keeping Tylenol and Motrin in the house. If I have a mom and a dad, or even worse, some other family members present, and they're stressed out, because now I have moms and dads that maybe haven't slept for a night or two, their child is uncomfortable, and their child's fever is high, please, if you're on your way to the ER, the urgent care, because you're not feeling comfortable with what you're seeing in your child, or you don't like the number on the thermometer, or you're just exhausted and you don't even know what to do anymore, I do encourage you at that point to give 1 dose of Tylenol and Motrin for sure. Because moms and dads, if you're on your way to the ER, the urgent care with your child who has a fever, the first thing they're going to do is give them a dose of Tylenol and Motrin. And so to me, I would rather you gave that dose and then see what your child looks like before kind of rushing off, because that's real frustrating for families. They're like, I could have just done that at home. Absolutely keep it at home. 1 dose here or there. I mean, I don't like giving it, but certainly 1 or 2 doses is okay for your child. So I was saying, there's no number on the thermometer that's a medical emergency. All right, so no number that we look at is a medical emergency for our kids. What does your child look like with that fever, right? So times where it may be a medical emergency or time to go see your medical provider for sure is when your child has a fever and they're inconsolable. They have a fever and they're having difficulty breathing, or they're having profuse vomiting, or they have an odd rash, or they are inconsolable. So it's fever and something else kind of going on, right? So if they're hydrated, you see in the wet diapers, but you're still seeing a fever, you don't need to rush off anywhere. Certainly after 24 hours of fever, your baby should be evaluated by a medical provider. I certainly encourage that. It's those nighttime fevers or those late evening fevers that arrive that we don't need to kind of jump and run to the ER with them, that I'm hoping some of this information gave you some reassurance and some tools to work with. At the end of this podcast, we'll leave you some information about some tools, some things you can do to support your baby when they have a fever. All right, that's it for today. I'm sure I'll talk again about fever because there's lots more that I can say. I hope this information was helpful for you. Remember, your child's health is a journey and you're doing an amazing job. Stay curious, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining Jennie on the Simply Pediatrics podcast. We hope that the valuable information she shared in this episode will inspire and empower you on your holistic parenting journey. If you would like to learn more about Jennie, her Simply Pediatrics practice, or anything that she spoke about today, please check the show notes that accompany this podcast and you'll find all the links and resources you need. You can also sign up for the Simply Pediatrics mailing list so that you receive Jennie's weekly newsletters packed with vital information and holistic parenting gems. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider giving this page a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any episodes. And don't forget to connect with us by sharing your thoughts in the comments section below. Follow Simply Pediatrics on any and all of the social media platforms. And if you're interested in an in-person or a virtual appointment with Jennie, please see the contact details in the show notes. Stay tuned for more episodes packed with a wealth of powerful information to support you on your holistic parenting path. See you next time.